long. Funny. How have you been? I'll ask just as you put food in your mouth. Yes. Oh, I lost your audio.
Yeah, because I turned it off because I was sticking something in my mouth. I'm okay. It's been a year, but you know.
Yeah, I think that's the status quo, right? It's everybody's response.
While everybody else was dealing with COVID, I was dealing with vertigo.
Oh, that's no fun either.
Because I can't be like everybody else. Not that I want to be in this case, but you know.
Yes. Oh, that's no fun. That's no fun.
No. I thought I had it kicked, but yesterday it kicked back, so we'll see how today goes.
Yeah. How is everyone else? Let's see, we've got about 30 people in here so far. Good morning. Hey, Sabina. It's good to see you too.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I'm good. What a great picture.
Well, I don't look quite the same these days, but thank you.
Yes. Are you doing well too?
Yeah, things are good. Things are good. Good lessons came out of last year, so.
That's awesome. We'll see if we can do it again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I see a number of familiar names.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to MtMoot21. I just was popping in to say that I wanted to thank everybody for coming. I'm really excited. I hope that you are too. And this session is about Moodle Workplace, and we're going to have the founder and I guess you're just the founder of My Learning Consultants, one of the founders. Founder, CEO, all around good person. I don't know.
Just make up some more titles for me.
Yeah, she's the director of innovation and exploration in anyway, Michelle Moore, ladies and gentlemen, one of my all-around favorite people and definitely one of the best Moodlers on the planet. So go ahead and take it away, Michelle.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all the very kind words. I just want you all to know that I've seen his script and he says the exact same thing in every session. So I'm glad to be here, Ryan. Thanks for the very kind introduction. I'm going to go ahead and screen share. I see we have a few more people popping in, so we won't begin too crazy quite yet. But we'll get this shared. All right. So I'll start with just a brief introduction to add to what Ryan had to say. As Ryan said, I am co-founder of My Learning Consultants, been using Moodle for a really long time. I think Ryan called me geriatric the other day, which I totally appreciated. Anyway, so I've been using Moodle for a while, and these days I spend most of my time helping organizations implement Moodle Workplace. It's interesting to think about where Moodle Workplace and I have come. over the course of the past year, because last year at this time, Workplace was still feeling kind of new, and we were just starting to figure things out, and we'd done a few implementations, but since then we've done many, many more. And I feel like I've made a few more mistakes and learned from them, and maybe have some more experiences to share. And I'm looking forward to today's session because I think we're going to get to dig a little bit deeper than we did last year. And I know some of you were in this same workshop last year, and I appreciate your tolerance for me. But last year, I think we spent a lot of time looking at the appearance settings and theming and look and feel differences, which is still one of my favorite things about Workplace. But today, my goal is to dig in a little bit deeper and do more, practice more, play more with some of the other features of Workplace. I'm also interested to hear today kind of where you have, where you are in terms of Moodle Workplace. How many of you have seen implementations? How many of you have adopted it? Have any of you done some additional exploring? Thought about your use case maybe in more detail about how you might use it? So lots of good things on the horizon for the next 3 hours. So let's go ahead and figure out a little bit about who's in the room. I'm going to pull up the chat so I can see what you all have to say. So we have something like 30 some odd people, or maybe 40 in the room. And I think going one by one might not be quite as efficient as I might like if we had a much smaller group. So I'm going to just ask some general questions and figure out a little bit about who you are and what you do. And feel free to share other things in the chat. I'll be interested to learn whatever I can. So I'm going to ask, first of all, how many of you, I want to know about your experience with Moodle. Would you consider yourself a novice, an expert, somewhere in between? How many years have you been using? How many years have you been using Moodle? Anything that you want to share here? Cool. 15 years, 16 years, yep. I can turn it on and off again, so I'm pretty much an expert, yep. Cool. So we have a range of experience. Developing content, in-betweener, totally new to Workplace. So Joanne, how much experience do you have with Moodle though? A couple of courses, okay. New to Workplace, yep. So, and then I know some of you have shared this, but I'm also curious to know what your role is in your work with Moodle. So some of you said that you've been primarily in the course development role. Some of you are developers, names I recognize there. Some of you are administrators. What hats do you wear? Those of you that are Moodle developers, I'm curious, what is your skill level on the course development side? Like, because I see developers kind of come in all shapes and sizes. Some, couldn't build a course to save their life. No offense. But, and then others are really, we could build courses together, and 30 courses in the span of 12 months. And just in case anyone thought I was digging on developers, please know that developers do so much for us. Like, And some of my favorite developers are in the room. Exactly, Alan. Pretty much without developers, we wouldn't have Moodle, you know? Cool, okay. And then how many of you have any experience with Workplace? This is where one of those polls would have been really handy if I would have thought ahead about that part. Dream about it all the time. Yes. I think I do too, Charlotte. Demo, okay. Cool. And then I think my last question is, working in a client's workplace right now. Cool. I'm curious about what type of organization you work in. Are you academic, education, higher ed, K-12, business, government, nonprofit? Professional learning. Training for public libraries, cool. Pre-service and in-service courses. Got it. Cool. It's hard to look at these names and remember the faces that go with them without having to scroll through all of the pictures of above, but I know a lot of the names are familiar. Awesome. Joe has lots of friends. Training and library staff. Neat. Okay, anything else you wish to share or anything you want to ask of me regarding introductions? Where am I? I am in a suburb of Kansas City. I am curious where other people are because I think with the Moot not being in person this year, I've seen some names and faces that are from outside of the country. I mean, and sometimes there are people from outside of the country, but I've seen a few more names from outside of the country. Glacier Park, yes. Charlottesville, I've been to Charlottesville. I know where Melanie is. India. I saw Moscow for a second and I was about to stop. Moscow, Idaho. Cool, yeah, so just outside of Kansas City myself. I do miss getting to go to Montana. It's a beautiful place. Yeah, beautiful place, especially enjoyable in the summer. I am on the Kansas side. Yes. Yeah, miss the weather in July. Oh, yes, I've been hearing about those. We've got several people on our team who are in Montana, and then one of our team members is in Wyoming, and yeah, they said it's really awful. That too, yeah. You've been having temperatures out there that really are on par with what we're having here, which is really unusual. Any other questions? Yeah. Okay, so I'll try to keep an eye on the chat as we go today. So if you have questions, please feel free to throw those into the chat, but also, grab the mic, it's okay too. I'd like to hear other voices besides my own. And sometimes it's a lot easier to ask a question verbally than it is to try and type out all the details and convey all of that So the plan for the workshop today is we're going to start kind of in reverse. I'm going to give you an opportunity to ask questions, not just about, you know, who we are and what we do and where I am, but you know, questions that kind of brought you here, driving questions, things that you're looking to have answered before the end of the day, or things that you'd like to know kind of up front. Then I'd like to talk through the differences between Moodle and Workplace, because my assumption is that most people in the room, and given your experience answers, you know, have some experience with Moodle, not so much experience with Workplace. And I think a question that a lot of people are looking to answer is, you know, what's the difference? Why would I go to Workplace instead of Moodle? What's, you know, what's in it for me? What problems can we solve? And then we'll take care of a few logistical items. So for those of you who have not yet chosen your team and grabbed your Moodle Workplace site, we'll take care of those things. And then we'll also develop use cases to work on and build from throughout the remainder of the workshop. So those are the logistical items. And then the goal is throughout the remainder of the workshop today, we take those use cases and do our best to build them out so that you have a functional, somewhat representative Moodle site or Moodle Workplace site. So with that, what questions do you have up front? What brings you here? What are you dying to know? What do you want to make sure that I answer? What do you want to make sure you know how to do? Anything that you're just curious about right off the top? This is your opportunity to fully derail me.
So Michelle, I keep
Yes.
hearing rumors about Workplace being released in the community, not being just partner driven. And some people have said that it's out there. Is that true?
It is not that I am aware. I have not heard anything from Moodle HQ about their intentions to release the entirety of Moodle Workplace into the Moodle community like Moodle Core is. I do know that there are features in Moodle Workplace that they are driving down into Moodle. So the certificate feature is an example of that. I know that some of the report builder interfaces, the report building tools are being worked into core Moodle. And if other people know this, please fill in the gaps here. And then I was just in a conversation the other day where they were talking about, like, right now, there are some appearance differences between Moodle and Moodle Workplace, like the theming settings and features are different. And they were talking about, you know, their goal is for there to be consistency, so that when you're making a decision between Moodle and Moodle Workplace, it's for the features, not because of the appearance settings. Which, to be honest, the appearance settings are a driver for me when I'm talking to clients about choosing Workplace or Moodle. I like the appearance settings enough that I'm like, okay, that's one mark in Workplace's favor. And yeah, I agree that those should be on par. I don't know, I'm trying to think. I think the appearance settings, there should be some consistency. That won't come until next year. I'm guessing probably towards the end of the year, though we may see some parity with Moodle 4.0 and Workplace 4.0. So that was the one question. So is that going to be released into Moodle Core or into the Moodle community? And then you had also mentioned, is it out there, right? I know that at this point, every premium partner who has access to the Moodle code, they sign a contract, there are terms, they work really hard to make sure things are secure, as servers should be. And any client that has Workplace code on their servers, and those cases are far and few between, I think, you know, they have contractual obligations to keep that code secure. Is it possible that somebody shared it out there? Maybe. If so, I don't know about it and I don't know where it is. But yeah, that's what I know. Does that answer your question?
It does. One of our developers thought he'd seen it on GitHub, but I was just like, it doesn't sound like what they do. And if it was there, people would know.
I would think, but you know, there's all kinds of things on the internet. So, yeah. Okay, going back through other questions. Do folks use both Workplace and Moodle? I'm trying to think. I think we do have a client who has a couple of Moodle sites, and one of them might be a Workplace site. And the reason I think that they have those multiple sites is they have some specific requirements about how one of those sites is configured, has a custom theme, a custom look and feel that is harder, that they have not updated to work with Workplace. And then even though Moodle Workplace has multi-tenancy, meaning that you can serve multiple audiences and kind of achieve the effect of having multiple Moodle sites all in one site, there are some limitations, right? For instance, there are some settings at the site level that are centralized, run across the entire site, that cannot be disabled on a per tenant basis. Over time, we will continue to see those features, I think, evolve where, like now, you can actually choose different authentication methods for different tenants within a site. That didn't exist out of the box, so that's new. And I think we'll expect to continue to see developments in those areas. So I think there is, you know, the potential that there are sites that go, well, you know, Workplace is really great for serving this one specific instance and use case. But I've got something that's just different enough. Maybe it's an internal employee versus an external client base kind of thing they're serving, or they're working with several different resellers or partners. They may need something else, but it's definitely not common, at least in my experience. And again, if other people have additional information on this, please chime in. Advantages of Workplace over Moodle. I will pull those up here in a second. I'll come back around. What does Workplace do? It's like you guys are building an agenda for me. Yeah, what does Workplace do that standard Moodle doesn't? What is it? A little about reports and how tenancy works. We will talk about that. Reports. This helps to make sure that we get things covered and that they're covered on the agenda. 200 trainers across the state that need to present 3-hour live training. So the trainers are presenting the 300 or the 3-hour live training, or you have 200 people who will sit in on that 3-hour live training. Maybe if I keep reading, I'll get to that answer. The trainers present. Okay, just making sure. Put the curriculum on Moodle Workplace, but to have their students test, they need to add each one to the class. End up with a bunch of names. Oh, so it's up to the teacher. Download, yeah. I'll have to think about that one. I'm curious whether the dynamic rules features in Workplace might help you there. If you were able to put them in different programs and have those programs correspond to different groups, like each teacher would have their own program. That's an idea off the top of my head. I might have to process that a little bit more. It's an, yeah, but I think there are several options. Heard a rumor that Moodle Corporate is starting a Moodle USA company. Yes, there have been there's been at least one press release on that. And My Learning Consultants, the company that I am part of, is one of those 3 companies. The other 2 partner companies that are involved in this are eLearning Experts and Moonami. So those 3 companies will merge under the umbrella of Moodle HQ. Moodle US will not be the only company to partner with to receive Workplace. Let me think. There are still a couple other partners in the US. I'm trying to think if either one of them is premium. There are other partners in North America. But I think I answered the one question before I finished reading the sentence. Moodle US won't be the only place you can get Workplace. There are other options, but as a US centric company, that may actually end up being the case. I know Martin will talk about Moodle US just a little bit on Friday. It's still, you know, things are still in the works. So, you know, the details are still a bit slim, but yeah, I can confirm that it's a bit more than rumor. Is Workplace a platform that is used instead of or in place of Moodle? Yes. And is it something that needs to be adopted by an entire organization in order to be utilized? I think any place that you might use Moodle, you might use Moodle Workplace. There are lots of different drivers for why people would use Moodle Workplace. And yeah, from an organizational approach, there are some things that Workplace can do for you that, you know, if you have the buy-in of the organization, that can be kind of nice. But I would also say that a little bit about Moodle, right? If I have the buy-in of the organization, then I can often integrate with other systems and automate a lot of things. And that's harder to do without the organization. But there are organization-centric features, org structures and things like that. Does Workplace have cohorts? Yes. And what version of Moodle Core? Workplace is about, depending on the version, about 6 weeks, 2 months behind Moodle Core. So Moodle 3.11 was released in May, and Moodle Workplace 3.11 was released in June. It was about, I think, 6 weeks back, or 6 weeks apart. The timeline for Moodle 4 versus Moodle Workplace 4 might be a little bit longer because of the, you know, the changes with the interface and things like that. But yeah, they work that way. One difference with Workplace is that Workplace at this point is evolving pretty quickly and does not have long-term releases like Moodle does, and things are not backported as often. So if there's a bug in Moodle 3.11, Moodle Workplace 3.11, it's not necessarily going to be ported back to Moodle Workplace 3.10, which is a little bit different than how Moodle bugs are handled. But that's so that they can continue to focus their efforts on improving Moodle Workplace. And so what that means for us and our clients is that we work really hard to stay current with the Moodle Workplace versions so that we're always getting the most recent bug fixes and releases. So, and what does pricing look like with the Moodle US merger? We're still working out those details, but our general philosophy is that, you know, we continue to offer the same sorts of services as Moodle US that we have, that we currently offer as 3 separate Moodle partners. So it'll be nice though, because you can have all of those choices in one place and a lot more flexibility and a bigger team. All right, those were a lot of really good questions, and I realized some of them I answered very quickly, but I also think that a lot of these we'll dig into a little bit more throughout the next couple of hours. And if we get to the end of the workshop and you're like, oh, I still didn't get my question answered and I want more information, let me know. And if you have a specific use case, as in the one Workplace example with the trainers, the 200 trainers, will be in, we have a vendor course, My Learning Consultants vendor course, and you can meet up with one of us there, or you'll likely see us in some of the social events as well. How complex is it to share content between Moodle and Workplace? If Workplace would be, that's a good question. So one of the things about, I'm going to use this as a segue into differences between Moodle and Workplace. So when I think about differences between Moodle and Moodle Workplace, everything at the course level is basically the same, right? So if you've developed courses in Moodle, I can take those courses, back them up and restore them and put them in a Moodle Workplace site. And I can take courses from a Moodle Workplace site and move them over to a Moodle site. Those things work pretty seamlessly because the core functionality, the course functionality is all still the same. There are a couple differences, minor differences in terms of course formats. Moodle Workplace offers the workplace list format, which brings together some of the greatest developments I've seen in course formats, things that I see often requested, and we can talk a little bit more about that. So that option is available. And then the other thing beyond that is anything that happens at a course level in a workplace site will feed into workplace features. And if you move that same course into a Moodle site, then those things, that information is all basically contained within the course or extracted out via whatever means you're normally using in Moodle, if that's something like configurable reports, things like that. Yeah, so it's pretty easy to take the same content. I will note there are a few plugins that we've used with clients, that some of our clients use, that behave a little bit differently in Workplace. So we try to make sure that we test, a plugin and make sure that it works the way we expect it to in Workplace. And the big kicker here is in relation to multi-tenancy. So again, if I think about an organization, and actually, Sabina, I'm going to steal your use case a little bit. So I know, Sabina, you have a central entity, and this central entity develops courses, and then you have branches or divisions, other places around the world that offer courses. So you might have courses that are offered in the US. You have another team or agency that offers courses in Australia. They're using the same content, same courses, but they have their own set of users. They might want to create their own set of programs, their own communications, all of those kinds of things. That would be a good example of multi-tenancy. So you as an organization still maintain the centralized site. There's content that you can share between those, the US folks and the folks in Australia, and yet again in England. Yeah, so you might set up this multi-tenancy, and then the trick with that multi-tenancy though is if you're using a plugin that is not aware of multi-tenancy. So a good example would be the Grade Me block. It's a plugin that shows teachers on the site the things that have to be graded. It does not necessarily understand that this teacher, this user belongs to just this tenant and should only be able to see users from just this tenant. And I can't remember exactly which way that Grade Me block goes, but it behaves a little bit differently than you might expect it to in Moodle Workplace. So if you have plugins that you're using in Moodle, I do say, you've got to be a little cautious with those. But yeah, otherwise your courses should pretty much roll over from one to the next. And then how complex would migration from Moodle to Moodle Workplace be? We upgrade sites or migrate sites from Moodle to Moodle Workplace all the time. Just did it last July 1st for another client. And it depends on how you want to do it. With this organization, we said, all right, let's start and make this simple. So we just moved to Workplace, and then our goal was to just honor all of the functionality that they had at the moment. We didn't start to implement any of the Workplace functionality until, besides the look and feel. And then over time, we're going to start to add in some of the Workplace features. And in that case, all of the courses came across, all of the user data came across. So it's something you want to plan out and think about how you do. But yeah, it's made to work that way. And then how long will your workshop site be out there? Yes, 30 days is the default. If you need the demo site for longer, let us know, reach out. Or if you want a more formal demonstration, rather than having to come up with something on your own. Thank you for filling that in, Ellen. Rick, that's a great question too. I have a document that is similar to this that spells out the differences between Workplace and Totara. So I will make note to add that to the course. And then I'll try to speak to that a little bit. It's been a while since I've used Totara though, so I'm not as up to date on the differences. Okay, got that captured. So, and then I'll put this document in, actually, I think this document is in the course. So, and then have we moved any site from Totara to Workplace? Yes. I know at My Learning Consultants, we've done that. And we've moved, actually, maybe I'm thinking, we've moved clients from IOMAD, IOMAD, which is another variation on this corporate focused kind of version of Moodle, from IMA to Workplace. And then I know Moonami is a Totara partner and eLearning Experts is a Totara partner. And I'm quite confident that they have moved clients between Totara and Workplace. And no, Melanie, we will do Workplace only. I like it. Okay, so looking at Workplace features versus Moodle, there's a more detailed view here, but when I think about the features that are specific to Moodle Workplace, there's a list of 6 things that I usually bring up. And let's see if the Moodle docs are back up. They've been working on an upgrade for the last 2 days.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. I'm like prepping for this and I'm like, this might put a hitch in my giddy up. So, okay. So I'll give you the rundown. I'm going to summarize what we see here. So when I think about the features that are unique to Moodle Workplace, what I generally think about is 1, the multi-tenancy. So again, that ability to take multiple Moodle sites or multiple user bases and manage them all in one central Workplace site. So we do have clients that had multiple Moodle sites because they needed those users to be managed in different ways by different people, different reports, those kinds of things. They have merged those into single Moodle Workplace sites. I've also seen clients that had singular Moodle sites who were trying to juggle, keep these users separate from these users and let this person manage these users. And they've been able to improve upon that situation by using Moodle Workplace as well. So that multi-tenancy is a driver for some. I will tell you what's interesting is that we do find some people come in and they're like, I'm pretty sure I need the multi-tenancy. They think that's a big selling point for them. But as we talk about their use case, we figure out that some of the features that Workplace offers will meet their needs without adding that multi-tenancy component, because there are pros and cons with implementing that. This document is related to Moodle 3.8. The multi-tenancy does now allow you to share programs, and so all of these features that they say came into play actually do exist now in Moodle Workplace 3.10 or 3.11. So multi-tenancy is one. The ability to do programs. Let me see if we've got that on this other page. Yeah, I'll come back here. So the ability to do programs and certifications is another really big thing for folks. Program is the ability to create learning paths or bring together series of courses. So it's not uncommon for an organization, if we think about a typical onboarding experience, right? A new employee is supposed to complete this course, and this course. In Moodle, all you can do is basically assign those people that course or maybe use the subcourse plugin. and try and communicate, like, here are the things that you need to do. And then trying to mix and match different courses and things like that can be a little bit tricky. So Moodle offers this ability, or Workplace offers the ability to tie courses together and to be able to say, you need to complete 3 of the 5, or you need to do these 3 and then these 2, or, you know, these 6 and then 1 of these 7. Yeah, learning paths are huge. And it is neat to look at the features that are added into Workplace, and to have been in the Moodle community so long and recognize, like, yep, people have been asking for that forever. People have been wanting that. There are plugins for this. That, you know, the neat thing about Workplace is it brings all of this functionality together. And whereas, yes, I can kind of achieve some of the same things with plugins with Moodle Workplace, all of those features talk to each other. Whereas with plugins, it's like, I can do this, but it doesn't know about my learning path that I've created over here with this other plugin. You can also do certifications in Moodle Workplace, which is really designed for compliance training. So working with an organization, the client that actually just moved over to Workplace a couple of weeks ago, they require their learners to complete an avalanche awareness training course every year. And it's essential to what these people do. It's a safety requirement. So in Moodle, they would have to keep spreadsheets and do all of this work to try and keep track of who had done it, who hadn't. Trying to chase those learners is complicated too. They were sending out manual messages, all of that. With Moodle Workplace, you can set up a certification and say, these people need to complete these courses every 2 years, 2 months prior to when this expires. Send them a notification that says, hey, it's time to recomplete this notification or this certification. And then if they miss that certification date, you can send them another notification that says, hey, your certification has expired. You need to come back in and complete this. You can also do variations on this. So let's say the first year that somebody takes this avalanche awareness course, it's going to go way into the detail, you know, everything they need to know. But year 2, year 3, year 4, they probably just need a refresher. So you can say in the first year, they have to do this version. In the second year, they can do this other, you know, shorter version. So programs, certifications, multi-tenancy. Another thing that's big is the reporting functionality. A lot of our clients that were on straight Moodle would use configurable reports or ad hoc reports to build site-wide reports that pull together information from all of the courses on the site. The reporting feature that's built into Moodle Workplace is awesome in that you can easily and intuitively build reports for completion. You can build user lists. You can show reports on those certifications and those program completion. I was telling a team just last week how actually I use the report builder a lot too to generate the spreadsheets I need to update user profile information or enroll people in courses. It saves me a lot of time from that maintenance administrative side of things too, which is kind of neat. All right, and then I know I'm missing one other thing. So multi-tenancy, programs, certifications, org structure. One of the big questions that drives adoption of Moodle Workplace as well. So in Moodle Workplace, you have the ability to create this organizational structure that allows you to define how your organization works, how it's structured, and then to be able to assign learning based on their position in that structure. And then also to use that to determine who sees what in reports. So for example, I'm going to go back to Sabina's example where they've got learners in the US, learners at a group in Australia, learners in England, and they might want to say, you know, here's the US based org structure, and this person in the US should be able to see all of their users here, but in the Western region, this person should be able to see all of these users. And then I can also say things like, yeah, if you work in this region or you have this role, then you should take you should be assigned to these courses. An interesting example of this, we work with a company that does concrete construction, and they offer training courses to all of their employees, and they have drivers and workers all across the country. And so they've got courses that are specific to how you manage concrete or what you do in cold weather environments. You know, when you work in a place that has 6 feet of snow every year or something like that. That course is obviously not relevant to someone who's working down in South Texas. So they can say, you know, this course is only relevant and only is assigned to people who live in these regions or in these states. And you can also say, you know, if this person's going to work in this department or this kind of role, then they need this safety training course or that. And the dynamic rules feature that ties into that is really cool. It allows you to create these if-then kind of statements. It says, if they work in this region, they have this job title, and their supervisor is Bob, then, you know, give them access to these things. So if you're looking for kind of a summary of the features that are in Workplace that make it different, if you look at the Moodle course or the workshop course itself, this is also another good high-level overview. So the appearance settings, that's a game changer for me. Multi-tenancy, programs and certifications, org structure, and dynamic rules, as well as that report builder. So you have a really brief summary of all of these things here. And when the Moodle docs are back up and running for us, you'll have all kinds of great links that will tell you more about all of these features. And then we'll play with them today as well. Question, does the user have to pick their personal interest, or is it driven by the organization? Typically, it's managed by someone at the administrative level who says, you know, here are the courses and you fall into the organization in this way, and therefore you're going to take these courses. But because of dynamic rules, you could do some other things with this. So for example, you could have a learner choose choose a setting in their profile, and however that data gets there are a number of ways, but they could say, you know, my interest is making sushi, and they could then be assigned, because they chose this interest, a program all about making sushi. So there are ways to kind of accommodate either one, whether you want to drive it from the top or if you want to let the learner make some choice about that. And this is another feature that will be interesting in, I'm trying to think what version this is coming in. I think it's Workplace 4.0. They are working on improving the course catalog feature, because right now there's not a great way in Moodle Workplace, or Moodle really for that matter, for learners to be able to shop courses. Especially in line with the way Moodle Workplace offers things. Because in Moodle Workplace, I can create these collections of courses. And yes, I've done it with clients, but it's not as elegant or beautiful as I would like it to be. So in coming versions, you'll have the ability to create this course catalog that would let learners pick and choose topics and programs of courses, rather than just individual courses like you'd see in most cases now. Other questions based on that quick rundown? Yes, you can send reports, set those to be scheduled on a regular basis to go out to users. Yep. I like that feature a lot too. And you can have a course that is part of several programs. So if a user completes a course as part of this program, they would not have to recomplete that course as part of another program. They would be taken care of. And as I said, we'll take a deeper look at these features as we go through, but these are great questions. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk logistics then and make sure we've got that taken care of. So the logistical items, and I'll increase my resolution here a little bit so that you can see. All right, so step one, if you have not already done this, I'd want you in the course to come in and choose your workshop team. So I can see here, for instance, team A is full, team AB is also full. Everyone wants to be on team A. You can choose to work independently. You can choose to work in a group, entirely up to you. And I'm using the group choice activity plugin to manage this. So whatever group you choose, you will be automatically placed into that group, and then that will give you access to your group in the discussion forum for your team, team O. Cool. And you should be able to see who's in your group, who's on your team. So if you've not already selected, go ahead and do that. And then the other thing you'll want to do is claim a Moodle workplace site. This will open up a Google spreadsheet, and it has 75 different Moodle workplace sites, or 75 of the same Moodle workplace site, as noted in the information that I did have posted in there. Each site is a default out of the box Moodle Workplace 311 site. There we go. Thank you, whoever made that happen. So it's fully functional. It is sized for demonstration purposes. So if you try to offer a live training class, tomorrow to 300 of your nearest friends, that might make the site unhappy and not perform very well because it's not sized for that. If you have a special use case and you need something a little bit different, let us know. We're happy to talk to you about what your needs are and what sort of demonstration you're wanting to do or things like that. But you can play as much as you want to play here, and if you end up creating something you think is really useful that you'd like to carry over somewhere else, you'd like to roll over into a production Moodle workplace site, let us know. We can do that too. But do know otherwise, unless you've talked to us, we are wiping these sites out in about 30 days. So you won't be able to access the Google Docs from the state computers. Okay. Teresa, do you want to, I'll put your name in here somewhere. Do you have a preference what site number you get? Oh, you have it. Thank you, Ryan. And mentioned recertifications. Could a recertification change year to year? Yes, I think so, that it could change year to year. So if you create the certification, you can always add and remove elements. So let's suppose your certification consists of these 3 courses, and now there's this new, you need to do a new course on ransomware. You could throw that into the certification mix, because the certification can consist of 1 course or multiple courses. It can be like programs set up to allow users to pick and choose. I've got 4 courses in here, they can choose 3. You can also require things to be completed in order. So you could also make changes at the course level too. Cool. So when you log into your Moodle workplace site, your account credentials are here. Note that right now everyone has everybody else's credentials. So I would recommend either changing those and or creating an account for yourself on that site. And then another thing that we'll need to think about is, as you're working in a team, which site are you going to use? So, if Fred, Charlotte, and Deb are on a team, which site do you want to build on? Or do you want to work in parallel and, pick what you like the best? It's totally up to you, however you want to work today. as we go through things. And if anyone has trouble logging in, let me know. Oh, and I was also going to add, I have these set up with the intention of, you know, these being for people who are participating in the workshop. But if you have a friend and you wanted to share the link to this and give somebody else access to a workplace demo site, as long as they are here, feel free to share. And if there aren't enough, let me know. It takes us a matter of minutes to set these up. Okay, and then the next step here, once you have your team, your site, we need to think about a use case. And as mentioned in the instructions here, having a use case in mind when you're working on a workplace site is really helpful, I think, to better understanding the features, because otherwise people are like, train me on workplace. I'm like, well, the settings are really easy, right? I can open this up, I can combine these courses, 3 clicks, I have a new program. What I find to be harder is, what tools do I need to use? What features are going to be useful for making this happen? And it really is all about pulling all of those pieces together to make a functional, effective implementation. Robin, you should be able to pick any one of those sites, or are you in a, okay. Ryan, can you take care of Robin and Kenneth too? Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Anyway, so yeah, having a real life use case makes it a little bit easier to, I think, get a better handle on what workplace can really do, and starting to think about how those things work together. I know some of you may come in and you have the use case in your head. Awesome, that's great if you want to do that. Otherwise, you can create your own use case here. So we have a variety started. If you want to add your own, you click the add entry button or tab. Technology is awesome when it works, isn't it, Mike? This is set up a little bit like a Mad Lib, right? So you fill in nouns, verbs, other things. And then when you get to the bottom, you say save and view, or save and add another. You can add as many use cases as you'd like, and then see what makes sense to you. I will let you decide whether or not you'd like to develop a use case with your team, or if you'd like to develop one on your own. Again, however you handle that. You may also say, I really like this one, and this is the one I'm going to work with. So awesome is a word. Yes. Okay, so what I'm going to do, those are the 3 logistical items, right? Choose your team, choose your site, make sure you can get into it, and then create your use case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop talking for a few minutes. I'm going to help troubleshoot those who are not able to get to their site. Username should be admin. And then remember, if you'd like to chat with the other members of your team, because I think we kind of all still need to maybe be in this whole space.
So apparently there are a few sites with deploy errors. Courtney and Rick have found a couple of them. So if that is the case, if you're getting that core admin local settings, external page tool certificate error, just switch to a different site. Just in the spreadsheet, just update a new site. It appears we had some deployment errors in some of the sites. So
got it.
but fortunately we have enough to where I think we can switch to a different one.
Cool. And we'll get those other deployment errors fixed. I think that's what happens when you hit deploy 72 times in a row. As I was starting to say, there is a discussion forum here to discuss within your team too. Your site says okay on the screen. Let me take a look. And invalid login. This is always the fun part, right? 56. Yay, we have a winner. Okay, site 56. So MtMoot21 -56. All right, I wonder if that's one of the deploy errors. Let me take a quick look. Site 10, all is well. Kent is good. And if you're in and waiting, then use this time to create your use case, connect with your team members, and we'll get these issues worked out. 56 has a deployment error. So you just got a different deployment error. Okay, 56 should, so your options, Joanne, would be to wait about 2 seconds here and for 56 to resolve itself, or to switch to another site. And then Deb says she's getting an invalid login. So let's check that out. Oh, good, good, good. It's a matter of holding your tongue right. 35 is good, awesome. 51, okay, I can fix that one. I'll just take you in behind the scenes here. So this is our unhosting control panel, which I find to be amazing because I can do things like install Moodle sites and upgrade stacks. I probably wouldn't mess with the site registration since this is a demonstration site. So you can just disregard. And 65 has okay showing. Okay, I've got several queued up here to redeploy, and the server can do one side at a time. Oh, it's okay. That data will just go to Moodle HQ, and they'll be like, another demo site. But they'll also increase their, count. So they'll be like, woohoo, we have another, another registered site. If you do have a Moodle site or a Moodle workplace site, I do recommend that you register them. Okay, after logging into the demo space, if you have not yet generated a use case, then do that. So come back into the Moodle course, leave your Moodle site open on the other side, another tab, and either find a use case that somebody's developed that you like and you want to steal, or click add entry and create your own. Good deal, Kent, thanks. Online into view here too. Oh no, having no luck. Check site 55, I sure can. All right, let me take a look at the list and compare that against what's showing as complete and find a site that will work for you. Let me see, what am I looking for? There we go. Oh, wow, let's see. Let's try 73, maybe with some down here at the bottom. 47. Amelia, I'd say that once you have either chosen or created a use case, then we will start to work together to implement that. Yeah, I would probably just have it open on the side for reference out. If you feel like you are ready to go and you want to start to play with some of the things in the use case and implement, you know, go for it. But I would coordinate with your team, whatever team you've chosen, and see what, make sure you're all on the same page. Okay. Okay, Ina, if you take 73, you should be good to go with that one. And I'm gonna move your name down in the spreadsheet because 73 shows as complete. And it shows as not being in use by anyone on the spreadsheet. I thought you had one, Kent. Okay, yes. Let me circle back around. I'll pull that spreadsheet aside then and see if we can find one. And then when we create a case, do you use the same test case URL as, yes. I'm sorry, that wasn't clear, Teresa. Yeah, so, well, and here's what I'd say is, if you're working in a team, whatever site you're going to use to build out that use case, put that URL in there. So you may leave that site URL in the use case blank until you coordinate with your team and figure out what, until you figure out which site you guys are building on. So, and then for those of you that are on hold a little bit, trying to get a site, these sites will continue to deploy. I'm sorry that we didn't catch that they weren't fully deployed before the session. As long as one of your teammates has a site, if they'll create an account for you on their site, then we can move forward with the implementation work. And then you will have a site before the, before the workshop is over. These sites will continue to deploy. But Kent, I am going to take a look, and Dominic too, and see if we do have any others that are complete. Okay, it looks like 23, 24, and 25 have deploy errors. Oh, good, I'm glad. So I'm just putting X's in those that I know I can tell you right here. 28, the one you're on, Kent, is in queue, so it should be done before too long. 29 is available, Kent, if you want to do 29 instead. Yes. How do you change teams? You should be able to just go back to the activity and make another selection. Well, that is weird, Kent. I wonder if the URL on, well, there's no, here, let me put the link in the chat. I wonder if you grabbed another URL. That is also a possibility, Kent. Yeah, if you have a VPN or something like that. Because I do remember, actually, now that you mention it, when we deployed, Workplace initially. Yeah, when we deployed Workplace initially there in Montana with state groups, they had to allow permission for the Workplace site. So yeah, if it's possible to work without your VPN, or if you have another alternative, otherwise, if I remember, you have access to a Workplace site of your own, right, Kent? I realize you might not be able to build on it if it's an organizational, state site, but you might be able to use it as a point of reference in conversations with your teammates to build things out. I'm Lindsay, I'm trying to be a little bit cautious about how many of these sites I kick off for deployment, because I don't want to overload the site. Oh my goodness. You have a laptop, you can log off the VPN, cool. Okay, let me check 39. What was I saying earlier about technology is awesome when it works, right? Okay. Robin, are you getting errors after you log in?
Yeah, it's giving me plugin errors. I've been able to log in, change your password, and then when you continue, it says plugin check, and then it gives me an error to say that in the admin tools and the certificate elements that there's missing from disk.
Okay, can you just bypass it or hit continue to get?
I don't. It won't let you continue. You can. It says upgrade Moodle database now, or
That'll be okay.
reload, or
You can say upgrade Moodle database now.
yeah, I tried that, and I don't think it did anything.
Oh. And you've changed the admin.
It says dependencies checked failed for mod_course certificate. And it says you must solve all plugin requirements before proceeding to install this Moodle version. So you go, yep, okay, continue. And then it takes you back to that plugin issue. And I've done the old check for available updates. Maybe I've got to upload zip files or something. No, it gives me a section error.
Yeah. That's weird that the one site. Okay, so here's what I'm inclined to do. Mike, you need a site too. The more cool, AC, great.
Maybe if you demonstrated how we would go through maybe with one of the scenarios, that would be useful.
Yes, yeah, that's my intention a bit.
We'll just watch.
Yeah, I'd say either as long as someone on your team has access to a site and can either give you an account on the site, or as you suggested, you can watch. We are in a bit of an interesting position, in that we don't have access to the Moodle docs. That my original intention was that we talk about a piece of the use case and then we divide, and you use the documentation to use that to help you figure things out. But without the documentation, that's going to be a little bit harder. So it means I have to act as the documentation, which I'm happy to do, but it
Why are the
changes the
Moodle
experience
docs
a little
not
bit.
there?
They're being upgraded.
So they're just taking them
so-
off. Yeah, okay.
I know, it's like nobody asked me, you know, that I needed them today. But yeah, so they are offline, and so the links that I had prepared aren't going to be very useful to us today. So let's do this. We will make sure that you get a Moodle site, a Moodle workplace site. And again, if somebody wants to create an account for somebody else that is having trouble getting into one, pretty much everything we're doing, we can do in parallel, in that multiple people can act on the same site at the same time and not step on each other's toes. It'll be all right. Or again, you can watch and see what you can see there.
I'll watch. It's 1:50 a.m. in the morning. Watching is good.
Oh gosh, yes, yes. Yeah.
Tried to sleep from about 8 o'clock last night. Fairly successfully, thankfully.
That's good. Yeah, I was going to say, you've got more staying power than I do. All right, so what I'd like to do then is let's talk about use cases. I'm going to leave this. Somebody had noted, by the way, that I had that spreadsheet set to open up in the same window. And as an aside, I'll mention that the reason I did that is it's for accessibility purposes. If people are operating on a machine and they're using accessibility tools like a screen reader, or they're on a mobile device that doesn't recognize new windows or new tabs, then doing same window is a safe bet. And yes, in a lot of cases, when I'm linking to an outside website, I might actually have it set in a new window. If I do that, you need to make sure that you note that it's opening in a new window. I kind of factor in my audience a bit, right?
Most people can hold down the quick key and press the button. It'll open a new tab anyway if they really need that.
That's exactly that. And that became like, yeah, when I was having this discussion way back when with someone, they pointed out, right? Like, we have the option to hit the control key and have it open in a new tab. But if somebody's on a device that won't open in a new tab, they can't find the new tab, they're on a screen reader that doesn't recognize the new tab, like, they're pretty much dead in the water. You know, yes, it's a bit of a pain for me to remember, like, oh, I have to back up to get back to the Moodle course. But for others, they could be not functional at all. So a little inconvenience for me.
That's a good thing to consider.
Yes.
So,
yeah. It's that context, you know. So Melanie says she's created accounts for everyone in the AA group or the AA team. So you can get into her site if need be. An aside question about the Moodle app. We run Moodle Cloud and always found the app to be a bit clunky and slow. I will say I have not used the app in coordination with Moodle Cloud. I have used the Moodle app some. I've used the Moodle Workplace app some. We have a couple of clients who are highly dependent on the app. Their user base is such that that's a big driver. There's some things about the Moodle app that are cool, but the thing that I've come to realize, particularly in the last year, is, you know, if you're building a course in Moodle, you tend to build it for this web interface, right? And we're so used to moving from one device to another and not really thinking about like how things work differently. But the Moodle app is not really just an alternative presentation of your Moodle course. It's a totally different platform. It's not just like a smaller screen of what you have unless you're just using it in a browser on your phone. So what I have found, I have to be, and I've told people, if you are planning to use the app, even if it's something you're implementing later, you need to make sure that you're designing for the app first, and then considering the web-based environment almost second, because there are features that work differently in the app and some things that don't work in the app that work on the web. And I'll clarify that by saying every feature that exists in Moodle Core does work in the app, right? A form works in the app, a lesson works in the app, the quiz works in the app. And those activities are available offline in the app, which is all way cool. And the offline functionality is awesome. But the nuances are sometimes lost. For instance, I like to use the social format course for community spaces on sites, and the social format course does not work on the mobile app. And then there are plugins and course layouts that I use with clients on their sites, and not all plugins will work in the app. So, and then there are also tricks that I use to help kind of facilitate navigation and modify the user interface. And the user interface in the app is just different enough. I think the app has room for improvement. And I was excited to hear the other day that Moodle HQ's mobile team is working on improvements, and we'll continue to see those. But yeah, so I think maybe some of what you're seeing is inherent in the app. It's just different, and you have to make sure you're designing for that and not trying to it's a lot harder to retrofit a course for the app. And the app does work well for certain applications, certain kinds of courses. Yes, yeah, if you're using SCORM and you could get them to use the app, that would be pretty cool, because they could use it offline and sync it up or sync up the data. The other thing I think is a little tricky is we were working with a client that they were doing kind of high stakes events, short timeline, need results fast. And the other thing that we're so used to is like being able to get data all the time and getting immediate results. And there are things about how apps work on phones that are just different. For instance, if the app is minimized, I think on an iPhone, it's not going to be syncing up data until you pull it up to the front again. That may have changed, and there's something else that the iOS changed that made things work a little bit differently or broke things. And then that works differently on an Android than it does on an iPhone. It just creates, it's like a whole new set of variables. It gets really interesting. One Topic and Grid, I have not tried them. My guess is that those plugins are not designed for work with the app, because here's the thing that I learned is that if somebody develops a plugin like One Topic, which I like a lot, by the way, they basically have to recreate that plugin specific to the mobile app. It's not like changing a few settings or adding a few lines of code to make it work. They really kind of have to rebuild it. I ran into this with the OU blog. We were using the OU blog with a client, and somebody asked in the community, like, "OU blog, are you going to work with the app?" And they're like, "No, we have no need for it." And it's it's basically a whole nother development project. So I tend to be cautious about adopting the app and be very intentional about using it. Does each team member need their own site login? I would probably recommend that. I think it would be easier, especially because we're without the Moodle documentation, and I think we're going to end up spending more time together in this room rather than in breakout rooms as I'd originally intended. Yeah, SCORM on a phone. That's another thing. If you know your SCORM's going to be delivered on a phone, then you need to be designing for that screen size too. Because otherwise, those buttons you have to press on, lots of people's fingers are too big. So, okay, let's take a look at a use case and see what we can do. Does anyone have a use case that they would recommend that we look at? Like fast green fish, neat, I like it. Whatchamacallit? Okay. Let's see, blurgity blurg, I like that one too. Go workplace, oh, these are good names. All right, where is whatchamacallit? There we go. Okay, let's see what the whatchamacallit use case is. So whatchamacallit company training series for serving their team members. For their team members, the company mixes and matches collection of courses, create custom learning programs. It's what Moodle Workplace is designed to do, right? They want the site to reflect their colors, teal, maroon, and royal blue. And their logo is Honda. So I'm trying to imagine that teal, royal blue, and maroon. So that's getting a little bit at those appearance settings, right? So within the whatchamacallit team, there are rock stars. Oh, I like that. Who work directly with and oversee the work of a particular group of team members. For each training project, the team of team members is as follows. So you have the boss who oversees the water slide team. On the water slide team, you have experts, champions, specialists, and engineers. It's a good thing you have an engineer to work on your water slide. And then you have the regroup team, which has the same roles, no engineers for regrouping though. Team members are assigned courses and programs based on their position. Courses are assigned as follows. So the boss has to take courses on Introduction to Slip and Mastering Shower. I don't know what that says about your boss. The water slide team program has to, yeah, unfortunately so, Melanie. How to jump, study, water slide engineers and champions, slip, shiver training, and how to jump. I like the how to jump one. Driving safety and focusing. Okay. And then when they complete the courses or the programs and certifications, they should get a certificate. And the programs for the boss and engineer only need to be completed once. The water slide team, though, has to complete the safety program annually. And the team member and their supervisor should receive a notification if their certification expires. And then it talks about the reports, right? So the boss should have access to the reports showing the water slide team and the regroup team. And then the departmental supervisors should have access to reports showing the progress of their teams. That makes sense. And then the manager should be able to see the reports for the specialists who work just below them. And then the rock star should be able to review reports for everyone. Okay. And then the other bit here is that the whatchamacallit company also works with two salespersons, Smarty Pants R Us and Amazon, who serve their own clients or their own team members. So each salesperson manages their own user base. Smarty Pants and Amazon use whatchamacallit's courses to create their own programs, but they also use whatchamacallit's programs because at whatchamacallit's they're rock stars. And then Smarty Pants and Amazon will use some of the prepared reports, so they don't have to create all of their own new reports. Okay, this looks good. It looks like a good starting point. So, and then let's see, FizzGig cannot get its teammates on the team. It's just you. On the team, are you talking, Paul, about on the site? Or like on the on your workplace site? Is that what you're trying to get your team members access to? They can log in, but they do not show up. Like in the list of users, they don't show up. Let's take a look and see where I would expect to see those. So in the workplace site, this is a little bit of a tutorial as well here. So in workplace, if you were to go to the site administration menu, the site administration menu is going to look basically the same as it does in Moodle. And I realize some of you maybe don't work on the admin side very often. But for those of you that do, the only change that you're really going to see that's going to be really noticeable here in the admin menus is courses has become learning. Still everything pretty much the same under that learning tab, but it's all of your courses and categories and all of those things. It is possible to find some of those workplace specific features in here. So if I searched for organization structure, then I would be able to find that in here. But I often, to get to most of the workplace stuff, I use the workplace launcher up here in the top right corner. So Paul, if I'm on your site, I would come here and either look for all users, because that's the set of users that's global. Now at this point, you probably don't have users specific to a tenant that don't match what's global, but you should be able to see those users here. Alternatively, if you're in that site administration menu, if you go to users and all users here, it should get you to the same page. They are not there. Did you, I'm gonna ask like a silly question. So when you created them, that was my question. Yeah, so did you create accounts for them? Or are you thinking they were going to be automatically populated? Ah, that's what's going on. Yes, yeah, every one of these sites is kind of out of the box. I don't have any magic set up to make the team members pop into the site. So what Melanie did for her team members is she went to that all users area and said new user. Oh, that'll work too. Yep. Yeah, you could all just log in with the same admin account. That would be okay too. Whatever it takes to get the job done, right? Okay. So, all right, that'll work too. The key will be, if you're setting up accounts for users on your site, is you go to that all users, right? And you say new user. You create the credit, or you create the account. Really, they're just a couple fields that are required up here at the top: username and password, first name, surname, and email address. And then you want to make sure under site administration that you give them a site admin role or something comparable. So if you go back to users and go to site administrators, give them a site admin role, then you all have admin rights. Fake email, that works. You could create an account to match the use case. I do have a spreadsheet in the course with a lot of accounts that you could also upload if you wanted to get a variety of users added to the system. And Jacqueline, that's a great suggestion too. Yeah, if you wanted to see the student view while you're playing around, you can create a new account. You can also, as I said, in the course, for those of you who are thinking ahead, there is a spreadsheet of sample users. You could download this spreadsheet and then come in here to users and upload users and create about, I think, 100 accounts in one fell swoop. Yes, test accounts are like the hardest thing, man. Okay, Dominic, I'll take a look. All right, so here's what I'd like to do. Before we figure out where we're going to start on the use case, I'm mindful of that we're about halfway through and people might need a tiny break, and or I know people are trying to coordinate getting into a site, getting accounts on another person's site. Some people maybe need a second to process their use case. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back and regroup, what I want to do is I want you to tell me, either in the context of this whatchamacallit use case or one of your own use cases, tell me where you think we should begin. Like, what part of the use case do you think we need to address first? And I'll tell you that there are a few dependencies here and there in terms of how we do things. Like, it's hard to create programs without having any courses, but there's quite a bit of flexibility. And I think we can start, with your recommendation and dig into that area first and then progress from there. So, and then Dominic, I'll troubleshoot your account here. So my clock says 11:10. Let's regroup at 11:20. So in 10 minutes, stretch, get a drink, make sure that you've got access to a Moodle site, or if you're choosing not to, that you're, geared up for watching and the toothpicks on your eyes if you need them. And then think about, what part of the use case we tackle first. And it could be tackle first because I know how to do this part, or it can be a tackle first because I'm really curious about how we do that. So that's what I'll be interested to hear. And then Dominic, okay, so see you in 10 minutes. I'm gonna mute. Actually, I'm not gonna mute because I'm still talking to people in the chat, but okay. But if you do walk away, mute before you go. Okay, site 46. And then Jeff is noting that the Moodle docs appear to be back, which is awesome. That is so good. Yes, that'll give us a little more flexibility here.
About perfect timing, isn't it? The time you really need it. Sorry, no docs. We're in a massive training course. That would be nice to have.
It would be really good. Yeah, the
Storm.
only challenge at this point is, I gathered a bunch of these links last year, and usually when I link to the Moodle docs, I capture I capture the URL without the version number, so it's always the most recent. But yeah, so hopefully all of these links are still valid since they couldn't dust them. But love moot coins. Yes, you've created lots of excitement. Okay, so let's talk about that use case. So if we're thinking about the use cases, either the whatchamacallit use case or your own use case, I am looking for input. Where do we start?
I would have thought you'd start at the courses that they have to do and build up, but I guess you could go the other way as well. When I think of groups and groupings, you could go either way. But you can't really start in the middle quite so easy, I would have thought. But maybe you can. You just build up from that and down. So there's lots of different ways you can do it.
Hey, Michelle, this is Karen Vanny, and whatchamacallit was my little pretend deal, and the one that we would be using. Do you just want to log into our site?
I could do, sure.
And
or I can do it on this one, and then I'll do it on this one. That way you can have your own site and you can do it too. And I don't
just mirror it. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool. Thanks for the offer though. Okay, so one person says you could build the organization first, which would work. You could build the organization first. I would also concur with Robin. You could build the courses first. I would hold off on the groups and groupings because, well, actually, I'm curious what part of the use case, Robin, do you think is solved by the groups and groupings?
Oh, nothing. I was just thinking when I was
okay.
considering how that functions, where how you can, you can
I see.
pre-configure a lot of groupings and not have any groups set up yet. And then once you've got
Yes.
those groups, then you can just chuck them in. And it's the same sort of thing in here. You could sort of say, well, I've got my courses, or I could start partway up the tree and then I could worry about the other stuff later.
Yeah. Okay. I'm with you now. Yeah, you were talking more generally. Okay, so you could start with the courses, you could start with the organization, you could start with the tenants and users. The positions are a little tricky to start with right up front because you've got to have the organization in place to feed people into those positions. And Adina says they started playing with the programs. So how did that go, Adina? How far did you get? Did you create courses before you went to that programs interface?
I created one course, and by creating, I just created a title and out of that course. And then I created one, like a manager program so at first I actually was looking at certifications, and then I saw that you need to have your program set up first. I think that's what I was looking at. And then, so I went to the programs and just added that one course to that program.
You're exactly right on that front. You have to have the program created before you can create the certification, and you have to have courses created before you can create the program. So I've got a link in here to the doc too, to this flow chart, because this is another thing that I'm interested in, right? Is there are some dependencies. So I've got a lucid chart, and I'll kind of capture some of these as we go. So we could start with orgs, we could start with courses. Those are both some baseline items, right? That have to be done for other things to come into place. You could start with appearance, and I'll tell you, with a lot of organizations I work with, that is where we start because it's not too hard to do, and it's a lot of fun. And it's so nice to be able to come into the site all the time and have something beautiful. But if we think about the essentials, right? I'm going to take this from two tacks. If I were thinking about a site and I've got to get it launched in the next hour and a half, what things do I have to have a functional site that I can offer to users?
You don't need the courses as yet, I would say, because you could sort of say, yeah, that's coming. So you could sort of say, look, I'm going to show you what you need to be doing, and then we'll add that content in later as it becomes available. And so you need the structure of the organization and the roles that they're going to play within that. But the actual content you certainly wouldn't need, but you could then have some sort of to say, well, you're going to be in such and such, more to come, especially if you've only got a very short amount of time to give something out there.
Yeah.
Placeholders for a lot of stuff.
Yeah. It probably depends on the tact you're taking, right? Because I'm also with Carly, where my head was, is that people can't do anything on the site until they have, ostensibly people are coming to the site to learn something, right? And the other stuff is nice, but I've got to have a course. But I also see what you're saying too.
So this is Rick. So quick, but we also don't want to get to where we get into the catch-up mode, where we've got people taking courses, et cetera, but we don't really have them lined up with organizations or positions or competencies. And we get halfway into the marathon and realize that now we've created a mess of spaghetti noodles that we've got to go back and undo. So I'm thinking you probably have a finished flow chart that's going to help us after we go through the Socratic method here.
I don't actually. I really do tackle this from a number of directions. So when we do our onboarding with clients, it's very personalized. So it depends on what their timeline is, what's most pressing. what information they have. So with some clients, we really do start with the courses first, because we know that the site needs to be functional and people need to have access to learning content. And I know that I can tag in the org structure later. I can build reports later. I can move those courses into programs later. Like everything else I can add on later, and not have to rework too much. The only variable related to the course setup that might be nice to figure out is we were doing an implementation the other day where we were looking at bringing together, let's say, 6 modules for learners, and they had a variety of different school districts they were delivering this content to. This school district might take these 3 modules, this school district might take these 2, you know, they'd all do different pieces. When they came in, they saw their 6 modules in one course. But what we realized is if you want to mix and match and not have to duplicate the same course and create all these variations, they were actually ahead to just put 1 module per course, and then they can build programs per school district. But even if I had built that 1 6 module course, we know it's pretty easy to pull those things apart, right? And pull those back out into separate courses. So yeah, so the advantage, the one bit of knowledge that I have that you guys don't, is that, yeah, I can tag all this other stuff in afterwards if I have courses in place, but I can't assign people to courses without having the courses. I can't create programs without having the courses. I can't create reports without having courses, really.
Yeah, I guess
So-
it depends. If the courses currently exist and it's just a matter of mapping all the structure, that's one thing. But if
Yeah.
you're starting with nothing and you're saying, well, I've got a designer or developer creating this course in the back end. So
Yeah.
while there's 10 courses that we're going to present and different people do what's the most important one? And it'll be the safety standards one that they have to do, and everyone's got to do it. Let's get that one in first. They can all just
Yes.
do it, because we know later on it's going to
Mhm.
map into all of their competencies that they've got to do. So we just need to
Yeah.
get that available for them. And who cares about that it's going to map into some certificate they're going to get? Yeah, they'll get that later. So we can always add that in. So it's all about, you know, just in time in some respects, but also what's available right now. So that makes a big difference as to how you're going to map it out. Like if
Oh,
you
it
had
totally
a
does.
if you had a course with all the different things and you were just adjusting some things, or there might be a new role that was put in there that you say, oh, well, they have to do this and this and this, then it'd be a very different sort of scenario.
Yeah. And I try just from a philosophical perspective to make sure that we're focused on the learning first and all the other decisions are made around that. So, you know, in an ideal scenario, we focus on that. Where you have the advantage of different teams, where you have people developing content and you have someone else that's perhaps configuring the site, then I would do what you said, Robin, and I would create just placeholder courses like somebody else said they did too.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we should do, is we should create the courses first. So, and just a note regarding Lucidchart, I love Lucidchart and I love Lucidspark, but the one thing that does annoy me a little bit that I haven't figured out how to work around is it does require you to create an account, even though I've said anyone and everyone can see it. It takes about 2 seconds to create the account, but then you can actually contribute too. I will share that screen as I create things, because the cool thing is that as we've talked through this, I've started to realize it. I mean, like I said, I don't have a flow chart that says this is the exact right way, but I've talked through it. It has become a little clearer to me, like, yeah, there's a lot of things that are dependent on the courses. So it's not a bad place to start. All right, so we're just going to create placeholders. Yep.
Sometimes senior management wants to see the whole structure first. They don't need to worry about their content. They want to see how it's all laid down. What are they going to do? So they can have that report straight up front, so they can go, right, okay, good. Now you can go into the course design. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And sometimes it takes me a few times to get the org structure right in some cases, because the org structure feeds into the dynamic rules, which feeds into the reports. And sometimes you get more and more information and you're like, oh yeah, no, that org structure I created doesn't work. So there are quite often times where I'm creating placeholders. Okay, let's test the concept, just like you
Yeah.
said.
And HR will say, we want this and that and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah. All right, so let's create some placeholder courses. I'm gonna just do this here on this screen, on this Moot site. If you have access to another, this is a place where your team can divide and conquer just a little bit. This will only take us a few minutes, so I'm not gonna split us out into breakout rooms. So I'm gonna go to the Learning tab inside administration. And if you're not inside administration, and then Learning, or from the Workplace Launcher, you can go to Courses and get to the same place. Actually, one less click. But my old habits die hard. Okay, so let's just come here. We're not going to worry so much about the categories. That is something that may come into play later in our use case. But I am going to say I'm just going to go ahead for now and create these under the default tenant. The default tenant is basically the primary owner of the site. So in the whatchamacallit example, the default tenant category would be, I would probably rename that whatchamacallit to align with the name of the organization. And that tells me like, this is where the whatchamacallit courses are being held. These are the ones that I might share out with other organizations, but then I might have different categories for the different tenants if that's appropriate. So actually, since I've said that, I'm going to go ahead and change that while we're here. So I'm going to edit the name of that default tenant category, call it whatchamacallit. And then I'm going to create a new course, and I'm going to create, we know what courses we need to create, right? They are over here.
Yeah, down the bottom there. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so I need to create Introduction to SLIP, and this would be a place where I might create a spreadsheet and upload them, but it'll take me just about as long. So Introduction to SLIP. And I am not worried about formatting because we're not really talking course design so much today. We're talking workplace, right? So good, next. And then you guys do the same with your own courses, whatever courses you feel like you need to create.
Look at you getting rid of those spaces on the end, eh?
I've been bitten so many times on that sort of stuff. Like,
why
I
isn't
know
that working? That's the same name. No, it's got that space on the end.
Yes, bad data. Okay.
Did it not take that mastering shower?
I went back and so
okay.
didn't refresh the page. Yeah, I had that same thought for a second. I got to hit save and return. I was trying to decide whether I had to just do this duplicate, right? Because then all I have to do is drop the name in there and be done. Because they're all the same anyway. So yeah, in a lot of cases, we'll build that prototype or master course and then make copies from there. I do love that duplicate feature though.
Yeah, those are the sort of things academics say to me, oh, wow, I didn't know I could do that. Oh my God, it's so simple things like splitting your screen to be able to see when you're comparing one thing to another. It's like such simple things sometimes. Don't forget your space on the end.
Oh, thank you. Missed it. Okay, we're gonna have to just live with it. Okay, drive safety.
And you got how to jump. Oh, no, you got how to jump in again. That's right. No, you haven't.
Do I? Oh, I thought
sure, do a refresh. I think you did.
Yeah. Okay. We'll refresh here in a second. Oh, it's copies in progress.
Yeah.
I think I just have that one last safety course. It's so helpful to have another set of eyes. Okay. Same, Melanie. That's yeah, I use that all the time. All right, I've got a bunch of courses. Michelle, is Workplace available at OpenLMS? No, it is not. I do believe they had it because eThink was a premium partner that was purchased by OpenLMS. There are perhaps a few eThink clients who are still on Workplace, and I think OpenLMS had a window in which they were still offering Workplace, but they don't believe they're not licensed to be offering it anymore. So I think they've got an alternative solution. Okay, so I have my courses, and then what?
Then we talked about the roles that each of their job roles, and then how that maps into it is one way, or the org structure. I think the job roles was the one where you sort of say, and there's also the two where you could sort of have where for that particular role, they might have to do, you know, how to jump, shiver training, etc. And things like that. So I'd be setting those up.
Yeah.
Even though the org structure may change, those roles may still be maintained. Just reporting might be different.
Right. So I know, I swear I've used this before. I've been using the Lucid Spark a lot more than this. Okay, so we know we need, courses are pretty darn handy to create first. I know that there are some dependencies on the org structure, but I would just read the instructions and stop talking at the same time. I know that I can create the org structure. I can kind of do that in parallel. There will be a point where the courses and org structure intersect. I know that courses will feed directly into programs, right? Because we did talk about that. Courses will feed into programs, and programs will feed into certifications. Okay, so there would be some arrows between here, right? Those are absolute requirements that I have to build these together. The org structure you may use to feed into the programs, you may use to feed it into those certifications. You can actually use the org structure to assign people to individual courses. So I feel like it almost have a dotted line between any one of those. They can intersect here. I'm trying to think if there's anything that's wholly dependent. Oh, thanks, Robin. If there's another thing that's wholly dependent on the org structure. I know that you have to have the org structure to feed into the it is quite possible that you use the org structure to feed into the reports and into the dynamic rules. Not an absolute requirement, but a possibility. So I'm going to kind of put it off to the side.
So do you then link in the role to the program, and then that role then feeds back into the org structure?
Yeah. So what'll end up happening is we'll say, okay, we create this program and we'll have this org structure, and the org structure will just define a job position.
Yeah.
And we'll connect the org structure to the program.
Okay.
So let's do that. Let's create the programs next, because that is just a direct flow through from what we were looking at on the courses. And then we'll do the org structure. So programs are the way to tie together courses. All right, test of your workplace interface knowledge. suggestions on where to go to create my programs?
I'll be clicking straight on those 9 dots at the top.
Same. Yes. Okay,
And then
so I'm going to create a program. So choosing programs up there. And again, you'll have your own set of courses in your use case, right? So I'm going to create a new program.
So programs just link the courses together, right? Is
Basically,
that okay?
Yep. The Moodle equivalent of a program.
I noticed that when you're assigning a course to a category, you can assign it to multiple categories. That's kind of cool. Or it looked like you could.
I'd be curious to see what you were looking at. I'll come back to that.
Okay.
I can assign a course to multiple programs. That I can definitely do. And I can assign it to multiple certifications. And yeah, those kinds of things. The Moodle equivalent of a program, what I do if I have to approximate that in Moodle, the subcourse plugin is one, which allows you to have a course that links to multiple other courses and it pulls in your completion data. Here, let me see. I'll show you what that looks like.
Okay. Yeah. There's always some plugin for these things, isn't there?
For many of them. And I did a presentation last year at one of the moots on the plugins that you can get rid of when you adopt Moodle Workplace. I will find that link and share it in the course too.
I was having a debate with my boss yesterday about a particular plugin that he wanted to put in. And it's like, why are we doing this when there's this other thing? And he was like, oh, well, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. But he didn't seem that happy, but I still pushed it.
There is, yeah, I don't think there's anything. This is the most elegant solution that gets as close as you can get to a program. Because, so what it basically does is these are all different courses elsewhere on the site, standard Moodle site. And then you say, these are the courses that make up this course. So it is pretty cool because it pulls in the grade from each of those courses, and your grade in this course is comprised of your grade in all of those courses. It shows your progress in each of these individual courses, which is very similar to what the programs interface in Workplace will give you. I think the user experience is a little bit prettier in Workplace than this. The other thing, as I mentioned before, is subcourse though is its own little plugin, right? And reports are not necessarily aware of the concept of a program, and so you start to have things that are a little bit disjointed. But yeah, this would be what I would look at probably if you were looking to do a program equivalent in Moodle. That's a really good question. There were other questions. So yes, the question about, yeah, what is a program a little bit. So yeah, basically a program is a way to create a learning path, right? Because oftentimes we say the learner needs to complete this, this, and this, or they need to complete this course as a prerequisite to this course, which you can't really do in Moodle. You can't enforce prerequisites on courses, at least not with the prerequisite functionality. So it gives you a way to say, here is your learning path, here's what it's intended that you go through. You can add a number of courses to a program. Yep. You have a set of courses that are related, absolutely. And you can enroll the student in the program rather than each individual course. Yes, there is also an efficiency there. That is a big time saver. Thank you, that's very helpful. Yeah, this, yes, and got it. Got it. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a program then. So I know that I need a program for the boss, right? So I'm going to call this first one
Boo.
boss program.
I don't know,
Yeah.
a bit of a Freudian slip on the keyboard.
And then in the workplace elements, I will often just copy the names into the ID numbers, because if I am uploading people to programs or doing other things, I find this is quite helpful.
And you find it nice to say program for the name of a program as well? Just so
Probably
it's
not
obvious to
really.
anyone.
Yeah, well, it depends on which interface I'm using to present to the learner. If
Yeah.
I look at that learner dashboard, it's going to say, if I remember correctly, program at the top, and then yeah, you've got redundancy.
But from a reporting perspective, it can be quite useful as well. So people are very aware what they're looking at, even though
Oh,
it's
yeah.
there. It'll say this is the boss program, and this is the program we're presenting, and then da, 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 da. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that I would tend probably not to do is I would not name the program based on the role, but sometimes
Yeah.
that is appropriate. More often than not, I've got things like the onboarding program, you know, like employee onboarding or new worker orientation, or, you know, something like that, that speaks more to what is it you're going to learn.
Yeah. Because you might
and-
reuse that as well. And then it doesn't sort of, the name isn't appropriate anymore, but it's the same role really.
Your mind reading skills are pretty excellent for the middle of the night. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah. So normally I'd come up with better names.
It's good coffee.
Just like courses, you can describe your program. You can associate images with your programs. You can tag your programs. You can also decide whether or not you can directly assign users to programs, or if they can only be assigned via other methods like the dynamic rules or certifications. Here's a feature that's pretty useful: the ability to add to course groups. So if we think about the whatchamacallit use case, we have whatchamacallit as the central agency, and then they have their partners, Amazon and something else that was a good name that I've completely forgotten.
Smarty Pants.
Smarty Pants, thank you. So yeah, so if I have users coming in from Smarty Pants is not going to want all of their users necessarily interacting with seeing users from whatchamacallit and vice versa. So I can use the same program for multiple tenants, but I can say create groups automatically for those users that are coming from those other tenants, so that I can put up walls between the different groups of users. So more often than not, I do this even if I'm not 100% sure I'm using tenancy, because I predicted something that if I don't have it in place, it's going to bite me.
Yeah.
So,
someone will say, can we just do, we've just expanded and
yes. Yeah. Okay. I would like to switch screen sharing. Is there somebody else that's willing to take on screen sharing who's about at this place? And or somebody who just wants to walk me through this, because I know that some of you have already done this because you've told me in the chat that you've done it. This is that moment for audience participation.
I just think you got a lively audience here. I'm just watching.
I've already
Fine.
added some courses to some programs. But I already...
Do you want to walk me through this then? Just be the voice activated computing kind of thing?
Voice activated, sure, maybe.
You can take control of the screen, request control.
Just talk me through it. That way.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did the ad.
Good.
And courses.
Good.
And then you do search. and you select the courses which that program is going to need from the courses that you had set up.
You got it. And I always forget, can I pick both of these at the same time here? I need Introduction to Slip and Mastering Shower. There we go.
What I didn't understand, Michelle, is the ad
Yes.
also has a set instead of courses. I didn't follow what that was.
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So let's suppose, well, here, I'll give you an example. Imagine I've got an onboarding program for new employees. Usually in those onboarding programs, people have to do like some HR stuff, right? Everybody has to do HR stuff. The IT team might have training specific to what they do and the technology they use. And their department manager might also have training specific to what they do. So in that case, it gives you a way to create subsets of your courses. So if I were to build out that example, I would say, okay, so you've got your HR courses, and then you choose to add courses to that. You can add a set to your set if you want, but that sounds a little crazy.
Almost like a category in gradebook where you can just have these sort of, it's just a, yeah, just to make it easier to manage. So, you know, they're all the HR courses, they're this, they're that, just to categorize them a bit better.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'd be able to just add that set later, and it's saving time.
The
Later.
set is not consistent across, like the set is just specific to a program. So I can't say, please let me just create this same set in another program.
Okay. Thanks.
It is specific, but if you know that you got your HR team has their set of courses that they want to manage and they want to figure out what courses go into that, I might give the HR person the ability to create their own programs. And then we'll set up some rules that say every new employee gets the HR program, every new employee gets the IT program. They would appear somewhat similarly on the dashboard for the learner.
Yeah.
The thing that's nice though about the set within the overall program is I can set requirements in each part. So here I could say, well, you've got to complete these two. So you've got to complete all in order. So you've got to complete these two before you can open these up. And I could say, well, inside of here, it's okay if you do these in any order, or you have to do 3 of the 4.
Yeah.
So it lets you build a combination of, yeah.
So we've answered our question for later on for the 3 out of the 5.
Yep. That's exactly it. So yeah, I've got one organization, they have courses for coaches, and they have like the full program is like 30 courses. And to see all 30 courses in one thing is a really long list. So they've just created subcategories and they've done that as sets. So in that case, it really is just informational. There is no additional functionality. They're not imposing any requirements. They say everything at every level is all in any order, but it just gives some structure. So we can use it for kind of those, yeah, enforcing structure on there, or just organizational. Okay, I'm gonna get rid of this set so that, yeah, cool. All right, so it is possible to add users to the program directly, but I imagine we will also kind of come back around to that org structure and add users via those rules as well. Okay, so we've got a program. Awesome. I'm going to hold off on the certifications because I'm mindful of the fact that time is flying by. So I'm going to suggest that we hit org structure, because I think if you got the concept of programs, certifications is a little bit trickier, but it flows, right? Conceptually. The org structure is a little more interesting. And we've got a program in place, so we have enough to be able to create some sort of org structure and do something with it. All right, where do I head to deal with the org structure?
Back to the scatter box.
Yep, the scatter box, I like that. Okay, so organizational structure. And if you change your default language on your site from English to US English, organization should be spelled with a Z instead of an S. All right, so organizational structures are comprised of departments and positions, which then feed into job assignments. Usually, when you've set up your departments and positions, in most cases, one side of that or the other, the departments or positions, tends to be pretty flat. So if I think about a company that is US centric, they might have a set of departments that's organized by region. So they've got Midwest, Northeast, Southwest, whatever. Or you're an organization that has departments, we'll go back to that, HR, IT, manufacturing, they're just all flat, all in a line. Nobody has hierarchy over anyone else. And then you might have the position side be hierarchical. So you might have the CEO and then the VP and then the director and then the manager and supervisor all the way down where it's somewhat nested. I've seen it also go the other way though. I've seen positional hierarchies where it's boss and employee, and that's all it's got. Those are the two roles. And then their department structure is a little more nested or more hierarchical. This isn't to say that you can't have some hierarchy on both sides. I have seen it done that way. But if you find yourself questioning, like, am I doing this the right way? Is this going to work? When I first started creating org structures, I found that to be really helpful. Like, okay, one tends to be flat and the other one's not, that's all right. That's going to make sense. And then ultimately what we'll say, somebody gets a job that's based on a combination of department and position. So do you want to start with departments or positions first?
Positions, let's go with that.
Positions, deal. I will say in most organizations, we have one framework because the same positions apply across multiple departments and parts of the organization, but it is possible to have multiple frameworks if need be. And the other thing I'll mention is that your org structure in here in Moodle is really more about the learners you're serving and who is supervising those learners than it is necessarily about the organizational structure that you might have posted on your website that says this is the guy who runs the show and all the way down. Because if you're serving external users, for instance, your internal org structure probably doesn't have a lot of impact here. Because there's just the training people that are going to oversee the results of those external users. And it doesn't matter that the IT guy has a role and a supervisor and a manager and all of that. All right. So this is my position framework. What positions do we have to add to the mix?
The boss, I think, was one of them, wasn't it?
Boss, yep. All right, I will tell you here too, I do often put the ID number in place for these positions. What I have learned though, is that because I often tweak my org structure or my org structure names, I often kind of wait until I'm done to change these because I invariably change it on the front end while I'm tweaking and then they don't match on the back end. And when I try to upload people, it breaks things. So I'm just gonna keep it at the top level for now. Okay, so we got the boss.
So many funky names. Here we go. Waterslide team.
Waterslide team.
So there's team supervisors.
And what's a little tricky in this sort of thing is you've got the combination of department and position. already
Yeah,
tied
so-
together. So you've
Yeah,
got
Yeah,
a
so position
engineer.
supervisor, isn't it?
engineer. I heard Rick.
Engineer is a position.
Yep.
Yeah.
Water slide specialist is a position.
Okay. And it's hard to know in this case on that specialist position without being a part of this organization. Is the water slide specialist just a specialist in the water slide department? Or is that really the position, right?
Is their position
Um,
description different depending on where they're placed? Yeah.
Right. So usually in an organization like this, I would assume that their specialists may be in different departments. So I'm going to do specialist here, and then Rick has just clued us into what one of our departments is going to be. Okay, so I've got my specialist. What else?
Expert, champion, manager.
Okay, see if I can remember all those. And it is possible to upload these, and I have done that with organizations that have quite a few.
Champion, yeah. And then
Yeah,
manager.
thank you. And I don't have a supervisor in there yet either, do I?
No, you don't.
Supervisor and
Manager.
manager. Is that all of them?
They're in the top section. I'm not sure about the others.
Okay, supervisor, expert, champion, manager, specialist, engineer, supervisor, expert, champion, manager. Yep. Oh, we need a rock star in there.
Yeah, because that was a role, wasn't it?
It is. And that one's kind of an interesting thing. You know, if your rock stars have admin rights on the site, then they maybe don't need, you know, a position in the structure here, because most of these are positions within the client that you're serving, right?
But the rockstar is
And-
working across multiple teams, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it
All right.
saying-
Within this, it is possible to create that structure, right? We know that underneath the boss, that the supervisor comes next, right? And then the expert, champion, and manager come below that. So you can drag and drop these things theoretically. Yep. You can
Yeah,
you can
drag and drop or
also
click and move, you know. Moodle's classic for that.
it is. You can also just click on those little dots, right? And then also say, well, this is going to be the first child of the boss. So actually, I know that one's got to be the top. So the supervisor goes directly into the boss. So much, my mouse settings have changed. I'll go back to this. Supervisor, expert, champion, manager. Supervisor, expert, champion. And all of those are at the same level. So it doesn't so much matter the order. But you can take this as far as you like. And then I think the specialist was underneath the manager. And the engineer, oh, was at the same level as the manager. So we just need to move him in a level. Okay, so it's not going to have any impact here that these are not in the exact same order as they are here. It's really about the level, right? The level of nesting. So the supervisor is under the boss, the engineer, manager, expert, and champion reports to the supervisor, and the specialist reports to the manager. And the rock star is at the same level as the, well, is under the boss. Yeah, and probably the rock star should really be at the same level as the boss because they should have access to everything. So I think that's okay.
But also that's a team, isn't it? So that's the particular team under the boss. But it doesn't matter, you're right.
True. Yeah, yeah, because they're from different organizations. But yeah, so the last thing to do here then is to think about who has access to what. I don't know if you caught it, but when I come here and I look at this position, I can choose whether this person is a manager or a department lead. And even after using these for a year, I still often have to click on this help button, remember exactly the impact of this. And the impact is somewhat dependent on how my org structure is set up. But a manager is a manager of everyone in a lower position, regardless of their department. So if I make the boss a manager, then that means he would be able to see supervisors, engineers, managers, experts, everyone that's below him, no matter what department they're in, which is actually okay in this case. That's what I want. They can see across the organization. And then you can decide from here that you've got, do you want them to be able to assign people to programs and certifications, receive notifications, user support reports? Usually the bosses, I find, like the reports, and that's about it. And then closer you get to the learner, those people like to get more of the notifications and have the ability to assign courses. Susan asks, how can we have programs and courses display on the dashboard? The learning tab that's on the dashboard by default will display programs and courses. There are a few settings under the appearance tab in the site administration setting. If you go to appearance and then theme and then workplace theme, you can choose what appears and how things appear on the dashboard learning tab. I do often tweak that a fair bit, but just like when you're an admin on a regular Moodle site, you're not going to see any courses on the dashboard unless you're assigned to those courses. So if you're wanting to see some of those courses and programs, allocate or assign or enroll your user in those courses, and then they'll show up on the dashboard, or use one of your test users. And then yes, to answer your follow-up question, it is because you're an admin. Cool. Okay, so we've made the boss the manager, and then the supervisor, I'm just gonna give one other role here. So the supervisor then is gonna be a department lead because the supervisor is specific to a team. So we don't want the supervisor to be able to see all the people on the water slide team and the other team. We really just want them to see the people in their own department. So that department lead is important. And then you can choose, I'm just going to go ahead and allocate all of these here, what they can actually do with that role. And speaking of the word role, that's probably a poor word choice there. People do sometimes get a little confused about this because they want to conflate what happens in the positions in the org structure with Moodle roles. Moodle roles are still entirely separate. The only place where you start to get a tiny bit of overlap is with this manager and department lead, where these actually add some functionality. Beyond that, these are really almost tools for organization, getting people in the right places more than anything. They don't inherently give a user any permissions on the site. So we have positions. Our department list is going to be pretty short because we've got a small organization. So this is going to be my whatchamacallit organization or departments. I've not yet come up with a good consistent naming convention for that top level. What if only one user is supposed to see reports on a subset of users? Then you would probably only give that one person. Well, there are a couple of ways you can do it. One is through the org structure, like I've just done there, where I've given them either the manager or the department lead. You could create a special role for that person, you know, that just gives them the ability at the level. The other thing you can do is in the report builder itself, you can actually just say on this report, I want this one person to be able to see this or to see these multiple reports. And that can be entirely independent of what happens in the org structure. Because they're asking great questions.
That's where you might have an executive assistant who will be able to run those reports for the manager, but not actually have the direct access to see everything.
That's a good example. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the water slide department was one, and then the regroup is the other. And these two operate at the same level. So the last thing to bring these two pieces together then is we're going to give somebody a job. And I've only got one user who gets a job today. So I come in here and I say, MLC student, and I can pick and choose. Is going to be the boss. In the, I need another layer in my org structure to be able to define him at the very top above. Yeah. Okay, so MLC student gets to be the supervisor in the water slide department. So that is one thing that I found is a little weird when you know, ideally I'd like to be able to assign the boss right here at this top level framework, but I do end up creating like this intermediate level just so I can give, you know, this is the organization as a whole.
I noticed there's also an end date. Is that if the person leaves, you put in an end date and then they can no longer access?
That would affect how they show up on reports. I don't believe there's a direct connection between the end date and their account suspended or not. So probably if you were working on an integration between systems to match up, okay, over here in our HR system, it says they're no longer with us, no longer part of the team. So then their job end date gets updated here. You might have a secondary action that says we're suspending their account.
Okay, that's reasonable.
Yeah. And actually, yeah, there's not a suspension that goes with that, because the other thing that happens, right, is people change jobs within the organization or get promoted. So this allows you to say, okay, they were a supervisor up until this point, and then they, they get promoted up to a boss, and then that job starts.
So they can show up in several frameworks.
They could, yeah, or have several positions. And a person can show up in several positions at the same time. You don't have to have one sole position. So if I were thinking about, let's say instead of doing separate tenants for the Smarty Pants and Amazon, I would just put them all in this one tenant, and I had different frameworks, different department frameworks for Amazon, a different department framework for Smarty Pants. I could say the rock star has, or I could say that Melanie has a rock star position at the whatchamacallit organization. She's also a rock star at Smarty Pants, and she's also a rock star at Amazon. And so they can hold multiple positions, and then all of those things will, carry through that way.
And I think if you have a project manager who's running different projects and would work in different teams, you could just, they would be moving around a lot and that sort of thing if they need to access different things. Yeah.
And that is really, and when people think about tenancy, thinking about that Rockstar example, when I read that description about how this works, right? They've got their own set of users. I might lean towards tenancy, but if I know I have these rock stars who work across all those organizations, tenancy only allows a user, a person cannot be a user in multiple tenants at the same time. They are completely different user bases. So I either have to choose, do I create different org frameworks in here in one tenant and manage that, so my rock stars only have to have one account? Or do I create a Rockstar account per tenant for those people to go in and manage those? This is something that I do expect we'll start to see, like subtenants and things like that, that'll allow someone to have effectively an account across multiple tenants. But it's not something that exists now, and is something that we put on the list of considerations when we're implementing tenancy. Jacqueline, good question. It won't let you create a new job. Do you have, in your departments and frameworks, do you have anything below this level, or do you just have this? Put one thing under it and then you'll be good. So it's got to have something just below that top level framework on both fronts, on the departments and positions. And then to your comment, Carly, ending a position role on a date would be kind of strange. Yes, you actually end it on the job assignment, so it affects that individual, not the role. So, and in fact, another interesting thing that happens is once you have a user assigned to a job, notice that I can no longer delete this department because I have a user assigned to it. So as long as you have people assigned, then you either have to move them or yeah, before you can delete them.
You might have a date on a position where, say you had some, I don't know, upcoming tax changes that were happening that needed to be implemented for global stuff. And so those positions had a very specific date they would be completed on, and then they would no longer
That's
exist.
true.
So you might have something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good example. There are not any settings though to allow me to end a position on a certain date. But when you give somebody the job, you can say their position is going to end on a certain date. All right, so I'd like to take the last step here to like connect all of these dots. Are these positions the same as positions in users? I might need help understanding that question, like in a user profile, or when I go to list of users. Not necessarily. So let me look at the user profile here. I will tell you, I do, in a lot of organizations where they have an integration or they're uploading user accounts, I will create a custom profile field that houses the information we need to make the job assignment. So I'll have a field for department and I'll have a field for position, or maybe I will say they're the water slide supervisor, and then create a dynamic rule that says, if it says they're water slide supervisor, give them this job assignment. You can also just import those directly, but I have found it's kind of useful to have that information in here too. In the profile, there are a few places where it's useful here that so I don't think in the profile itself, there is a position field, unless I'm overlooking it. But like I said, I have created a custom profile field to house it here. I also know they've been paring down some of the They may have gotten rid of it. So institution and department. The department here is not the department in the org structure unless you choose to use that as a mapping. But there is no automatic like, oh, it says you're in department here, that makes that department there. With a massively open workplace, imagine, yes. So we've done this with a client. We customized the login page. Well, and you wouldn't have to do a customization, but they added custom profile fields to the login page where a user would create their own account and they would say, I am, in their case, it was choose whether you're a coach, an athlete, or athletic trainer, and then choose what league you're part of. And so we basically gathered all the departmental organization or the job assignment information in their login process or in their account creation process, and then use that to feed automatically into the org structure, give them job assignments, which then flowed through and gave them access to certain courses or programs. Okay, so the last step to connect these dots. We've got our program, we have people in jobs. We know that we want to say people in these jobs get these programs, right? Two ways I can do this, two ways I can get to do this. I need to basically create a dynamic rule that says, you know, if they have this job assignment, assign them to this program. I can assign dynamic rules from the program interface directly. So I could say on this program, set up a dynamic rule that allocates users to this boss program. My leaning and the way I've been doing it most consistently is I do the dynamic rules through the centralized dynamic rules interface. And maybe I haven't run across the right use case to make me want to do it the other way. But my logic in doing it here is that all of my dynamic rules are in one centralized location. And if something's not working or something's happening that I can't figure out where or why it's coming from,
Yeah.
I don't have to check all of these multiple places.
Just easier to see everything in one spot. Go,
Yes.
oh, it's going to be that versus, okay, keep all that in my head, back and forth, holy God, lots of spreadsheets to sort of see what's going on, what could have been the problem.
Yes.
That's always the problem with these dynamic type things, isn't it? You think, oh God, why
I
is that not
know.
working? Oh my God, I've got this some weird sub rule somewhere that sort of culls off something.
That's exactly it. Yeah, certifications are the hardest too, because there's so many interactions with that. Timeframes. So when I name my dynamic rules, I try to be really specific. What course, what program, what certification am I acting on, and what's happening? And if you're consistent in how you name these, then they all get grouped together. So I know this one is related to the BOSS program. So anything I'd be creating related to the BOSS program, I would start with the name BOSS program and then the action. Some people might choose to do it the other way, but I like to see all of my BOSS program stuff all together.
And is that because what you said before, you have all of your dynamic rules in the one spot rather than going to all the different areas? So then it's much easier to manage.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing is the set of dynamic rules that I can create in the context of a program or certification. It covers most of my bases, but I have more options here than what the default options are in the context of a program or a certification. So this lets me do anything I want and can do. So I want to say if someone's a boss, then they get this program. So my if is my condition. So I'm looking here for a job. So user has a position.
Boss.
If they're a boss, I can choose if their start date is dependent here. Save changes. Action. I want to allocate them to a program. So I choose my program. And then the neat thing about this is if I had users that met these criteria, then it would tell me who is this about to be applied to, which is a nice check for me to make sure that I'm not actually gonna like assign this to thousands of users that I didn't mean to, or that I wrote it wrong and it's not working for anyone. But if I enable this, then if and when anyone gets assigned to that boss position, then they will be automatically assigned to that program forever and ever. And then it'll go from there. The dynamic rules will allow me to send those notifications and reminders and things like that here too. But so that gave us a pretty good look. We got programs, org structure. The nice thing about the reports is they're fairly intuitive. So if you wanted to create a report now related to this program, you could come into the report builder and say, I want to create a program report, a program completion report, and it will provide some default fields that'll take care of that. As you think about completion reports, one difference between Moodle and Workplace is Workplace is much more dependent on course completion settings. Often in Moodle courses, I never touched the course completion settings because I wasn't feeding into reports and it didn't matter so much. But in Workplace, I find that information bleeds through a lot. So make sure as you're defining operating procedures that you add defining course completions to the end of that list. I'm going to still sit here and answer questions. I know we're technically at end of time and my headphones are about to die, so I will swap those out here in a second. They're beeping in my ear. But I am happy to hang out and answer questions as long as you want. Also, for those of you that were looking for Moodle Workplace sample sites, someone else on my team was going through and resolving those deploy errors, just redeploying. So all of those sites should be good to go now. And so you should be able to go in and play. If you want to stay and talk about your specific use case, I am happy to do that. Or if you want to set up something different, I will put my email address in the chat. And then, like I said, I saw a couple other questions in there, so I will go back to those. Thank you for your patience today as we were dealing with those technical issues and the Moodle docs being offline for us. But hopefully you picked up a little bit of information and ideas. And yeah, I hope you enjoy experimenting with your site and that you have great fun at the remainder of the conference. I will for sure see you around.
Thank you, Michelle. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. I just wanted to say thank you to you and to everyone who participated. This Workplace is a whole lot of interesting stuff, and I'm glad that you'll all have the opportunity to play after this in those Workplace sites. I'm going to give a round of virtual applause to Michelle and to everyone in the session. So thanks a lot. I'm stopping recording. So, but yeah, you guys can hang out and ask all the questions you like.
Hey, Ryan, it's Rick.